Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Code This. So in this video we're going to be building this homepage here, which is a fitness or gym type homepage. And just to give you a quick overview, we have this kind of hero slider image thing here. If you click this search icon, you get this kind of pop-up overlay search box. You can close it here. If you click any of these play buttons here, you'll get a embedded YouTube video, and you can pretty easily modify this to be whichever kind of YouTube video you'd like to appear here. And then again, you can close it with the X button. And then scrolling down, it's a pretty standard type homepage. Got a few sections, and then we have another slider here of what could be personal trainers. So you can kind of click through this, and then just standard footer with a nice background image and search box. And also it's going to be fully responsive, so if I kind of just pull the screen down, you'll see that it collapses quite nicely. So if we go down to like an iPhone or so screen width, you can see everything collapses down quite nicely. Our slider comes down to just one slide at a time, and everything else kind of just stacks on top of one another. We still get our embedded YouTube video, and then our upper nav links are kind of collapsed into this hamburger menu. And we have our search icon as well. And so yeah, that's about it. Let's get right into it, and we'll start with some HTML. I'm going to go ahead and pull this over a little bit. And we can see that I just have a blank folder here on my desktop, and I'm just going to go ahead and right click open with code to pull up Visual Studio Code. I'm going to bring this over. Let's just left and then drag this over a bit. Okay, and then let's go ahead and create a new file here. Call it index.html. Create a new directory called CSS, and then inside of that new directory we'll create a file called styles.css. And then back in our index.html file, let's just do an exclamation point and then push tab, and that'll scaffold us some nice HTML that we can start working with. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to click this to collapse that left pane so we have a little bit more horizontal space for coding. And so starting out, we're going to need some libraries. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in a bunch of libraries I have copied, and then I'll go ahead and explain kind of what these are. So paste those in. So this first one here is the Slick Slider CSS, and then we have a Slick Slider CSS theme file. Then we have our custom style sheet, styles.css, which we'll be building later in this video. Then we have the jQuery library, Font Awesome library. We're going to use that for a few of the icons. And then we have the Slick Slider JavaScript library. So we're going to need all of those for the various functionality we'll have on this page. And let's get right into it. So down here in our body tag, I'm going to start with adding a section with an ID of hero. And this is going to kind of be this entire upper section, including the header nav links. Inside of this, we'll do the header. Inside of the header tag, we're going to do a div with a class of container. Inside of that, we'll do div ID equals header logo mobile, and this is going to be for smaller screens. We'll give it a class of top gym logo. Inside of that, a hyperlink, and we'll say top, line break, and then gym. Okay, and then I also forgot, we're going to do something up here. So up in the title tag, let's update that to say top gym instead of just document. So go ahead and update that. And then coming back down here, underneath our header logo mobile, let's create a nav tag. This is going to hold our navigation links. Inside will be an unordered list with a class of flex, because we're going to treat this like a flex box. Let's create a list item. Inside of that, a hyperlink, and then we have home. And I'll just copy this list item a few more times because we have home, about us, classes, and then our top gym logo, instructors, news, contact, and search. So let's update these. This one's going to be about us. This one will be classes. This is going to be the logo. So let's go ahead and just do top, and then a line break, and then gym, and then we'll give a class and an ID to the list item. So ID equals header logo, class equals top gym logo. I'm just going to bring down this hyperlink to make it a little bit easier to read here. All right, and then we have instructors, news, contact, And then this one's going to be that search icon. So let's go ahead and do, instead of the hyperlink, let's get rid of that. And let's do a button tag, ID of search. Oops. And then inside of the button, we'll do span class equals fa hyphen search. And that's just some font awesome classes to give us that nice icon. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit easier to read here. Let's bring the list item down. And there we go. So that should be our nav links there. And then underneath our nav tag, let's do a button. And this is going to be that hamburger menu for smaller screens. So hamburger hyphen menu. And then inside we'll have span class equals strip. And since we have 3 white lines in our hamburger menu, let's just paste that 2 more times. And that should do it for this header tag. So underneath the header tag, let's work on this hero slider. So let's create a div, ID equals hero slider. And then inside of that, we'll have a div with a class of hero slider item. And then we're going to give it a style attribute. And this is going to be the background image. So background image, colon URL. And let's just go ahead and close out that div tag. And then now I have an image already hosted that I'm just going to copy paste. And I pulled all of these images from this free template, which I found on colorlib.com. So this is not a template that I designed. I just kind of looked for a free template. I found one that I liked that had to do with fitness, and I kind of just pulled all the images from there and am coding it out from scratch. So this is not my design. Anyway, so here's the first slider image, so you can go ahead and put that in there, and then inside of that div you can see that we have this play button and some text here and then more info. So let's do that. Inside we'll have a div class equals hero slider marketing. Inside of that we have the play button, so let's do a hyperlink class equals YouTube button, and then we'll do span class equals fa play. And that's just more font awesome to display a nice play button there. And let's drag this over a bit more so we can see. Okay, and then underneath that, let's do an H2 tag. And the first one is bfit top gym. Under that, we'll do a button more info. Okay, and let's go ahead and copy this hero slider item, because we're going to have 2 more of those. So paste and paste. And this one is going to be hero or main slider 2.jpg, and this one will be main slider 3. And this one is bfit top trainer, and this one is bfit top body. All right, and that should do it for this entire hero section. So let's go ahead and come on down below that closing section tag, and let's work on the next section here, these 3 boxes. So let's do another section tag, ID of features. Inside of that we're going to have a div with a class of flex and a class of container. Inside of that we'll have a div class of box, and then inside of the box we have an image. So you can see here that we have kind of this one image, another small icon image, and then some header text and a paragraph. So each box is going to have that. So let's create the first image. So image source, I'm again going to copy an image I already have hosted, paste that in there, and then I'll say alt equals exercise class. Underneath that, let's open up a div with a class of feature info container, and that's going to have this icon and then all this text. So the first thing will be div class of icon, and then inside of that we'll have the image. And again, I'll copy the URL to the icon image. Copy that, paste it in, and then some alt text. This first one is going to be star trophy icon. And then underneath this div with a class of icon, let's go ahead and do an H4 tag, amazing setting, and then a paragraph tag. And inside of the paragraph, I'll just copy this text that we have. Oops. Oh, just one of them. Copy that to the paragraph tag, and that's one of the boxes, and we have 3 of these. So let's go ahead and copy this, paste it twice. And what happened to our indentation? Let's go ahead and fix the indentation a bit here. There we go. And then so for box number 2, it says best trainers. So let's update this header. Best trainers. And the third one says diet plans. And then the images were just feature 2, icon 2, feature 3, icon 3. And then the alt text for icon 3 is smoothie icon, and for icon 2, dumbbell icon. And oh yeah, the alt text for the first image. So for image 2, it is, I don't know, man doing dumbbell rows, it looks like. So man doing dumbbell rows. Third one is woman doing leg press. So let's update that. Woman doing leg press. And that should do it for this features section. So let's go ahead and move on down to the services section. So come on down below that closing section tag. Open up another section tag, ID equals services. Inside of that we'll have an H3 tag, and that says services, and that's this text up here. Underneath that we have another div with a class of flex and container. Inside of that we're going to have our boxes, so div class equals box. Inside of each box we kind of have one image and then some header text and paragraph. So do that, image, source. Again, I'm just going to copy the URL I already have. So that's for the first image there, and I'll say alt equals basketball icon. Underneath that we'll have a H4 tag, and this one says Pilates. Underneath that we're going to have a paragraph, and again I'm just going to go ahead and copy this text into the paragraph tag. Right there. And then let's go ahead and copy this box 3 more times because we have 4 total service boxes. So 1, 2, 3, and again it screwed up our indentation. What is happening? Bring that over. Bring that over. Bring that over. Okay. And then let's update these icons. This one is just going to be services icon 2, services icon 3, services icon 4, and then let's update the alt text. So for the second one it looks like bench press icon. Bench press is 2 words. Bench press icon. Third one is stopwatch icon, and the fourth one is MP3 player icon. And then this one is free lifting, yoga, whoops, yoga, and spinning. Okay, and that should, oh, we have this see all services button. So down here below that parent div, right before the closing section tag, let's create a button and say see all services. And then let's move on to the next piece, which is going to be a little bit more complicated. It's this slider here. So let's open up another section tag. We'll say ID equals trainers. Inside of that we have some header text. The first one is small, so we'll do an H5 and say the best. Then we have an H3. It says trainers. Underneath that, let's do a div with a class of container. And then inside of the container, we're going to have our slider here. So div ID equals trainers slider. Inside of that, we're going to have each of our slide items. So div class equals trainer slider item. And then go ahead and open that up. Inside of each one, we have our image of the trainer. So I'll copy the first one here. I think the first one was, yeah, it was Rachel Smith here. So copy the image URL, which I already have hosted. Paste that in there. Whoops. And then we'll say alt equals Rachel Smith. Let's say Rachel Smith personal trainer. Underneath the image, we have their name and an H4 tag. So H4 Rachel Smith, and then a paragraph tag, and she is an aerobics instructor. And that should be one of our slide items, and we have 6 total. So I just kind of repeated the first three more times just to kind of show that you can have more than, or you can have a whole bunch of these. So let's copy this 2 more times, fix the indentation, and the next one will be trainer 2 and then trainer 3. And let's see here, the next one, it looks like it is Nick Andros, Pilates instructor, and then we have Larry Underwood, strength training coach. And then we'll also update the names in the image's alt text. So that there, Nick Andros, personal trainer. Okay, let's double check everything. Okay, that looks good. Now let's go ahead and copy all of these sliders. I'm sorry, all these slider items one more time. So let's copy all 3 of them and then come down and paste one more time. And again, indentation got screwed up, fix that. Okay, so now we have 6 total personal trainers. Obviously they're just kind of repeats, but you know, that's just to kind of show the functionality and the power of the Slick Slider plugin. And that should do it for the trainers section. Let's come down here. Oops, let's come down to the next one, which is this 3 boxes here. Let's do another section tag, and we'll say ID equals schedule services. And then inside of there, we're going to have div class equals flex and class of container. And then inside of that, we'll have div class equals upcoming classes box, and that's going to be this first box over here to the left, upcoming classes. So inside of that we have some strong text, so we'll say next in a strong tag. Then we have an H4 for upcoming classes. And then let's create a table to kind of show all this tabular data here, all of our workout classes. Inside of the table, let's do a TR for a row, and then a TD for a column, and the first one looks like an image of a stopwatch, so we'll open up an image tag, and I'll copy the image I already have hosted once again, paste it in there, and then we'll say alt equals stopwatch. And then let's go and do another TD element, and it looks like it says gym fitness, and then another TD element for the time, 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Okay, that looks good for one of the rows. And we have 6 total classes, so let's copy this entire TR and we'll paste it 2 more times, fix the indentation, kind of save us some time. We're going to copy all 3 this time to create the total of 6. And again, let's do this quick. Indentation fix. Okay, and then let's quickly just kind of run through and update these. So the next one is Pilates, and that is from 12 to 1. So 12 to 1. The icon's the same. Next one is spinning. That is from 1 to 2. 1 to 2. Next one is yoga. 2 to 3. Next one is Zumba from 3 to 4. Whoops. And then finally cardio kickbox from 4 to 5. Okay, so update all those. That should do it for that box. So then let's come down underneath this upcoming classes box. Open up another div here. And this div will be for this membership deals thing. So I'll say div class equals membership cards box. Inside of that we'll have div class equals, and we'll just say inner container, because we kind of have this blue box, and then inside of the blue box we have this white box. So I'm calling that white box this inner container here. So inside of that, let's do our strong tag and say next. And underneath that we have an H4, and we'll say membership deals. Under that, let's open up an H2 because we have some large text here that says 25% discount. So 25% is large, and then a span tag inside of there, and we'll put the word discount inside of the span tag so we can kind of control that and make that smaller than the 25%. And then we're going to have this image here of this lady doing a workout. That'll just be a background image in our CSS. So we'll worry about that a little bit later on. So underneath the membership cards box, let's open up another div. And this will be class equals personal trainer box. Inside of there, let's do strong tag, and then we'll say become a. Underneath that, an H4, and that will just say personal trainer. Underneath that looks like a paragraph tag. Let's go ahead and put all of this stuff inside of there. And then underneath the paragraph we have a button. So let's create a button tag and say sign up now. And again, we'll just put this kind of personal trainer background image in our CSS. So we'll worry about that a little bit later as well. Okay, so after this section, we just have to deal with the footers. So we're almost done with the HTML here. So let's come down here and let's open up a footer tag inside a div class equals footer container. Inside of that, we'll have div ID equals footer logo, and that's going to be this top gym logo here. And then we'll say class equals top gym logo. And then inside of that, we have our hyperlink top line break, and then gym. Underneath that logo div, we'll open up a nav tag. Inside of the nav, we'll have an unordered list. And this is going to hold all of our footer nav links down here. So let's go ahead and open up a list item, hyperlink, and the first one is home. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this several more times because, again, we have about us, classes, instructors, news, and contact. So quickly update these: about us, classes, instructors, news, contact. And then underneath the nav tag, we'll do a div, we'll say class of a mailing list. We have an input, type equals text, placeholder is your email, all caps. Underneath that, we have a button that says sign up. And that should be it for the mailing list. So then underneath that, we have our kind of social icons down here. So come down under that closing div tag and we'll do UL class equals social icons. Oops. Inside we'll have a list item and then a hyperlink once again. And then we'll do some font awesome classes to get those social icons. So span class equals FAB, FA hyphen Pinterest. And then let's go ahead and just copy this several more times because we have a total of 5 social icons. So 1, 2, 3, 4 more times. First one's Pinterest, next one is Facebook, next one is Twitter. Then we have YouTube and then Behance. Okay, and then finally underneath this unordered list we have an image, this little small blue icon down here. So we'll do image source, and I'm just going to go ahead again and copy this hosted image that I already have. Image source, and then we're going to give this a class of bicep, and then alt text of bicep flex icon, and then underneath the image, finally we have our small tag, and it says copyright ampersand copy semicolon 2019 all rights reserved, and then a pipe icon. This template is made with, and then we have a heart icon. We'll just use font awesome FA heart. We're going to give credit to the designers of this template. So made with love by, and then let's have a link back to their homepage, which is colorlib.com. So put colorlib in there, and there we go. Let's go ahead and just bring this down a bit so we can see it a little bit better. So copyright 2019, all rights reserved. This template is made with love by Colorlib. Okay, perfect. So that almost does it for the HTML. So there's a few things that we kind of miss, right? We have these little pop-up overlays, right? The first one is the embedded YouTube video, and then we have this search icon thing. So let's go ahead and add the HTML for those now, because it's going to be down here below the footer tag. So underneath the footer tag, let's create a new div, and this will be the search container. So div ID equals search container. Inside of that, let's have a span for the close button, and we'll just call this search container close. Class of FA and then FA times for some font awesome stuff. Then we'll have an H3, the word search, and then underneath that, let's have a div class equals search container input. And that's going to hold the actual text box. So input type equals text, name equals search, placeholder equals search this site, and then we have a button with the text of search inside of that. So that should do it for the search pop-up overlay. Next is the YouTube video kind of video frame thing. So we'll say a div ID of video frame, which this is going to hold an iframe to a YouTube video. Same thing for the close button, except we'll say span ID of video frame, whoops, video frame hide, class equals FA times, and then underneath that span tag we'll do a div class equals video frame container. Inside of that we'll have a div class equals video frame scalar, and we'll see kind of what all this is doing once we get into the CSS. And it's going to be all about kind of dynamically resizing the YouTube iframe video. It's a little bit tricky with iframes, so we'll see how this works shortly. So the iframe will say ID equals embed video, and then source. Right now I just pulled an Arnold Schwarzenegger motivation video, and that's the link I'm about to paste in here, but you can pretty easily grab any YouTube video you like and go to share and then copy the embed text, and it'll kind of give you this entire iframe code. So you can just replace that with the iframe code that we're putting here, and then you'll get your other video to appear. You know, in fact, let's just go ahead and do that here. I'm going to pull up YouTube and I'm going to go Arnold Schwarzenegger motivation, and I think the one I grabbed was this one here. So if you click on this, I'm just going to go ahead and pause it, and if you go down here and click share and then click on embed, this is where I got that code. So I can just go ahead and copy all of this just to kind of show you the process, and instead of me typing it, let's get rid of all that code, paste it in from YouTube, and the only thing I really modified was the width and the height. Let's get rid of that because we're going to do that in our CSS. And then yep, we still want to allow full screen, so yeah, that looks good. That should do it now for the HTML. At the very end of the video we're going to be adding some JavaScript in our page here as well, but let's do that a little bit later. Let's go into our CSS, but first things first, let's pull up our page. All right, let's go ahead and pull up our prototype, or our work in progress. So this is kind of what it looks like with just HTML all by itself. You can see it's pretty bad, right? All right, so let's get started on the CSS. So come over here to your styles.css file, and actually the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import some custom fonts from Google Fonts. So come over to a new tab and go to fonts.google.com, and I'll just quickly show kind of how you can do this. And in fact, the font we're going to grab is actually right here, Roboto. So if you go ahead and if you wanted to choose a different font, you would just kind of come over here and click the plus icon, and then it'll show you here kind of what you, click on at import, and this is what we're going to import into our CSS file. But I want to grab a few more font weights of the Roboto font, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. And if you come into here, and let's also grab 300, click the plus there. Let's grab, so we already grabbed 400. Let's grab the 500 as well. Click the plus there, and let's also grab the 700 bold plus there. Now if we come back to our family selected tab, we can see that our at import has been updated. Roboto 300, 400, 500, and 700. So go ahead and copy all this minus these style tags. So don't grab those because we're already in our style sheet. So then come up to the very top of your styles.css and paste that whole thing in there. And that will import the custom font. And now we can start on our global styles. So let's do start global styles, end global styles, and then let's go ahead and just do a asterisk to get every single element, and we're going to get rid of the outlines on everything. Those things really piss me off. Except we need to do this for the slick slider. So slick track, and then not slick list. We don't want to. And then we're going to add a transition of 0.4 seconds to everything on our page except anything with a class of slick track and a class of slick list. And that's because the slick slider plugin, you cannot be adding transitions to that. It kind of screws with the functionality. So that's why we're kind of including that in there. Okay, and then for our body tag, let's just quickly do font family. We're going to set it to our Roboto with a Helvetica and a sans serif backup. Then we'll have margin 0, padding 0, set the font size to 1 rem, font weight to 400, line height of 1.7, and font color to 353535. And then let's do some header styles. H1, H2, H3, H4, H5. We'll get rid of the default margins and padding. Set the font weights to all headers to 500. And then increase the letter spacing to 2 pixels. And that's going to increase the spacing between letters here just a little bit. Underneath that, let's target everything except the H2s. So H1, H3, H4, H5, and these are all uppercase. So all the headers are uppercase except the H2s up here in our hero section. Then we'll have the H2s, and we'll set the font size to 8 rem because it's pretty large. Then for the H3s, we have font size of 2.85 rem, letter spacing of 7 pixels, and then color white, margin bottom 4 rem. And then similarly for the H4 tags, we're going to do font size 1.15 rem, font weight 500. Actually, we don't need to set the font weight to 500 for the H4s. We're already doing that here, so we can get rid of that. I apologize. H5s, we're going to set the color to white. I believe all of our H5s are white. Then all unordered lists, let's get rid of the list style type, so put that to none, and get rid of the default padding. Then all of our buttons, we can see that they're all kind of this blue background, they're all caps, they got a lot of spacing around the text, so let's go ahead and create that. Let's also set the cursor to pointer. The background color is 233 EDE, which is that nice blue. The color is white, so FFF. Font size 0.9 rem. Text align center. Padding 1.25 rem on the top and bottom and 3 rem on the right and the left. Border none. Text transform uppercase. Font weight, 500, and then font family, because we need to explicitly override the browser defaults to the same as what we did on our body tag. So our custom Roboto with the Helvetica and sans serif backup, and let's also increase the letter spacing on the buttons to 2 pixels as well. Okay, so now all of our hyperlinks, we're going to say text decoration none, and then on hover, text decoration underline. Okay, and then underneath that, we're going to target our paragraph tags, and they're all going to be color of 7B, 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 line height 2, so we're going to double the line height, which is the vertical spacing between each line of text, and let's bring the font size down just a little bit to 0.95 rems. Then all of our sections and our footer tags, we're going to give it some padding on the top and bottom of 6 rem and 0 on the right and the left, and we're going to center all the text and items inside of those containers. Then all of our elements with a class of container, we're going to set a max width to 1100 pixels, and that just kind of ensures on very large screens that our web page won't expand very wide horizontally, and then everything will look stretched and terrible. So we're going to set a max width of 1100 pixels. And then we want it to be horizontally centered on the page, so margin 0 auto, and then we'll set that to position relative as well, because we're going to have some absolute and fixed position elements inside of some of our container tags, so make sure that's relative. All of our flex containers we're going to set to a display of flex, and then justify the content to space between, and that'll kind of line things out nicely in a horizontal fashion. Then all of our things with a class of box, we'll just say text align center. They all have that in common. That should end our global styles. So then we can start on this kind of hero section with the header and whatnot. It's going to go ahead and start on that. So we'll say start hero section styles, and then end hero section styles. And in between those two comments, let's work on the hero section. So first things first, let's grab that hero, position relative, padding 0. Come down, let's work on the header tag, and that'll be position absolute, width 100%, top 0, left 0. Background is RGBA 0, comma 0, comma 0, comma 0.6. So it's a little bit translucent. You can see that it's kind of still see-through. You can see this woman's face still behind the header. That's why we have the opacity at 0.6 at the end there. Color is white, padding is 1 rem 0, so 1 rem on the top and the bottom, 0 on the left and the right, and then z-index of 1. And then our nav tag inside of the header, let's go ahead and set a max width of 950 pixels on that, margin 0 auto to horizontally center it, position relative, and then header nav, and then the flex unordered list inside of that, we're going to say align items center. That's going to vertically center all of these things with our top gym logo. So align items center, justify content will be space around for this one. Let's go ahead and save that and see what it looks like so far. If I refresh this, well, let's continue working on this header, and so that it kind of looks a little bit better, and then I kind of want to show how this align items center works. So in fact, let's go ahead and comment this out for now to see how it works. So I'm going to leave that commented out, and let's move on. So header, nav, and then the hyperlinks. So this looks a little bit crazy, but all we're saying is grab all the hyperlinks inside of the list items that are inside of the unordered list inside of the nav tag. So we're kind of just drilling down parent container, subparent, 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 and then finally the child element, which are the hyperlink tags. So we'll say color of white, font size 0.8 rem, text transform uppercase, and then font weight 500. Now let's work on that top gym logo. So we had 3 logos that had that class, and that's why we're kind of using this common class so that we can style all 3 logos. So we have this one up here, and then there's a hidden one for small screens, and then we have this one down here in the footer, and they all look the exact same. So we all gave them this one class of top gym logo, and let's just style that. So margin 0.2 rems, border 2 pixels, solid and white, padding 15 pixels, 10 pixels, 7 pixels. And since we only supplied 3 values here, what this means is 15 on the top, 10 on the right, 7 on the bottom, and 10 on the left. So we only put a right value, and that means it will copy that for the left value. So it's going to be 10 pixels on the right and the left. Text align center, and then letter spacing 2 pixels. Then top gym logo, and then inside of that we had the hyperlink, so we'll do top gym logo space A to grab that hyperlink, and let's increase the font size 28 pixels. Text transform uppercase, color is white, line height is 20 pixels. And then finally top gym logo, a hover. We don't want this to be underlined on hover like we set the other ones to be, so we'll say text decoration none on hover. And then finally, let's do header logo mobile with a hashtag because it has an ID of that, and we'll say display none because we only want that one to be visible on smaller screens. And then let's just keep going with the header section. So search, so that was this search icon over here. We gave it an ID of search. We'll say position absolute, right 0, top 50%, margin top -7 pixels, and that'll kind of vertically center it. Width auto, padding 0, font size 15 pixels, border none because it's a button and those have borders by default, so we'll get rid of that. And then background transparent, color white. Okay, let's come over here and let's refresh and see what our header looks like. Okay, so it's starting to come together. We still have this weird blue button here, but I think that's our hamburger menu, so we're going to go ahead and fix that shortly. But let's just look at kind of how this is not vertically aligned with our logo. So let's come back up to when we had this align items. Let's go ahead and uncomment this, save the file, and let's do a refresh. And now you can see that it kind of aligns perfectly in the vertical center of the largest or tallest item inside of our flex container. So that's how align items center works. It's super easy with Flexbox, and that's kind of why I prefer to use that for a lot of stuff. So you'll see me using a lot of Flexbox throughout these tutorials. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So underneath the search, let's go ahead and, underneath search, let's grab the hamburger menu. So ID of hamburger menu, we'll say background color transparent. And it was a border of 1 pixel, solid in white, padding of 3 pixels, 5 pixels, width of 30 pixels, cursor pointer, margin 0, and then 1 rem. And by default, it's going to be display none because it's only visible on smaller screens. Next, let's work on those strips inside of the hamburger menu. So hamburger menu dot strip display block, height 1 pixel, background color white, margin 4 pixels and 0. Okay. And then I think now we're ready to start working on this hero slider. So we haven't yet initialized it with our slick slider JavaScript. Well, let's go ahead and work on some of the classes and IDs. So the first thing was hero slider. And then inside of that we have each of our hero slide items. So we'll say position relative, and then a height of 895 pixels. We'll say background repeat, no repeat, background size cover, background position, top and center. And so we're kind of specifying all these background style rules here in our CSS file, but back in our HTML was where we actually, if we come back up to the top, it was in here where we actually set the background hyphen image for each of our div tags. So now we're just setting the rest of the background properties, but we're doing it in our style sheet in one line because they all have this class of hero slide item. So underneath that we can do hero slider, hero slide item, and then the YouTube buttons. Those are going to be a background of what is it, 233 EDE, that blue color. Padding 1.2 rem on the top and the bottom, 1.45 rem on the right and the left. Border radius of 30 pixels. Color of white. Font size 16. Then hero slider marketing. Position will be absolute. Z-index 2. Text align center. Color white. Top 50%, left 0, right 0, and then margin we'll do -100 pixels, auto 0. That'll kind of vertically center all of this marketing content inside of our slider items. Okay, so next we have these custom slider dots, which kind of have this rounded border around them. So let's go ahead and work on those, because those don't come for us or come to us for free from the Slick Slider plugin. So we have to kind of style those ourselves. So hero slider dot, and then they come with a class of slick dots. So we'll just say bottom 35 pixels. And then each of the dots, so we'll say hero slider dot slick dots, and they're kind of in this list item, unordered list, and then they have a button and then a pseudo selector of before. So it's kind of involved, but all of that will get us the actual white dot inside there. So we'll set the color of those to white, the opacity to 1, and then some padding, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, and then 3 pixels. So that's 2 pixels on the top, right, and bottom, 3 pixel padding on the left. And then we're going to set the border to 3 pixels, solid and transparent, and then the border radius to 20 pixels to make it that rounded look. And then finally we can copy all of this, and then we'll say li, and then the one that has the class of slick-active, that means that is the currently active dot. We want to give that a border color of white, not transparent. And that will give us this kind of cool effect of highlighting which slide item we're on with a rounded kind of circular target, or however that looks. And that should end the hero section styles. That was a pretty large section, so it took a little bit longer. Let's go ahead and start our features section styles, and then say end features section styles, and inside of those comments we'll start on our features. Okay, so our features section is this down here, these 3 boxes. So let's go ahead and work on that. So it was it had an ID of features, and then inside that we had our class of box. So for all 3 of those, we'll set the width to 31%, because they take up about 1/3 of the page with a little bit of spacing and white space in the middle. And then we'll say hashtag features box, and then each of the images inside of the box, but only the immediate children images of the box element. So we have this image, which is an immediate child of the div with the class of box, and then we have this image, which is actually 2 children deep. So this is only going to target that immediate child image, and that's why we have this greater than sign here. So let's do that, and we'll say width 100%, because we want that upper image to span 100% of the width of its container box. Then we can keep doing the @ sign, hashtag features box, and then feature info container, and we'll say position relative, then features box icon, and now we're going to target this icon here. And so this one's going to be position relative, margin 0 auto, background 233 EDE, which is that blue, border radius 45 pixels, top negative 35 pixels, width 88 pixels, height 88 pixels, line height 83 pixels, and then text align center. Then we'll go ahead and grab the image inside of that div with a class of icon. So features.box.icon, and then the image inside of that we'll say vertical align middle. And that should do it for this entire features section. It's pretty simplistic. We just have 3 things aligned horizontally, and then on smaller screens they'll collapse and stack on top of one another. So pretty simple there with our CSS. So let's go to the next section, which will be services section styles. So end services section styles, and that's going to be this section down here. So let's work on that next. So first things first, hashtag services. We'll say background of 212122, which will give us that nice kind of blackish background there. Then we can do services, and then the container element, we're going to say margin bottom of 4 rem, and that's going to give us the spacing here above this see all services button. Then we'll do services, and then let's target each of the boxes. So services.box, width will be 23.5% each, because they're about 1/4 of the width of the entire page. They each take up about 25%, but a little bit less because we have spacing in between them. So 23.5%, and there's the dogs barking. Next we'll do services.box, and then the image inside we'll say height of 65 pixels, margin bottom of 2 rem, and then we have services box h4, color of white. And again, it's pretty simplistic for the services section. That's about it for the CSS, at least for desktop size screen. So next we'll do the trainers section. So we'll say start trainers, trainers section styles, and trainers section styles. And let's come up in here, we'll say hashtag trainers, and then we'll just do a background image. And this is going to be this kind of blue designed background. So we'll say background image URL, and let's go ahead and set a URL in there, which I have to a hosted image of that cool little blue background. And then we'll say background repeat. Actually, you know what? We can put all this in one line of CSS almost. So let's just get rid of that hyphen image. So we'll say background URL, and at the very end of that closing parentheses, we'll say top space center space no repeat, and then background size is cover. And that should do it for that blue background. Then we'll do trainers hyphen slider, and we're going to give this a width of 90% so it doesn't span the entire width of the page, and then horizontally center it with margin 0 auto. Then trainers slider, and then dot slick slide is each of the slick slide items inside of the trainers slider. We're going to say padding 0.20 pixels, and ignore all the commotion that you hear. I apologize. Next will be trainers slider dot trainer slider item space image. So we're going to grab the image inside, and we're just going to say width 100%, and that just makes sure that this width here is not going to be larger or smaller than its parent container. It'll be exact width and height of its parent container. So width 100%. Then we'll do trainers slider h4, and this is color of white, and whoops, and margin top of 2.5 rems. And then we'll do trainers slider and the paragraph tag, color white, and opacity 0.6. Then we have trainers slider dot slick prev for the previous arrow. It's going to be a left negative 30 pixel positioning. And then let's copy this because the next line will be very similar. Instead of slick prev, it'll be slick next, and it's going to be right of negative 10 pixels. So update that there. And then we still also need to increase the font size of the actual right and left arrows. So actually, let's go ahead and copy. Let's copy this first one up here. Whoops. Copy all of that. Paste it down here, and then we'll do colon before, comma, and then paste it again, but we'll do slick hyphen next colon before. And let's increase all of those to font size of 40 pixels. And surprisingly, that should do it for the CSS here. We'll have a little bit more complexity when we initialize this slider in our JavaScript, but for now that should do it for the desktop CSS. So let's go ahead and come down to the next section, the schedule services styles. So I'll just add a comment and say start schedule services styles, and then end schedule services styles. Inside of there we'll do schedule services, and text align is left, because as you can see, most of this text is actually aligned to the left, whereas everything else was kind of aligned in the center. So we'll explicitly set text align left on the parent container there. Then schedule services, and then the flex container, and then the immediate div children inside of the flex container, which is going to be each of these three boxes. We'll set those to a width of 32%, and then box sizing border box. And that'll kind of help with our padding and spacing. Next, schedule services.flex, and then each of the strong tags, which is this next, next, and become a. Let's target all those, and those look like display block. Color is 212122. Font size of 0.85 rem, and opacity 0.6, and then letter spacing of 4 pixels. And then we'll come down and we'll say upcoming classes box. So that's this first box over here to the left. So let's work on the styles for that. It's a little bit more complicated. And that's going to be a border of 2 pixels, solid, and then hashtag E5E7F3. That'll be that kind of off-white or light gray border there. And then padding 4 rem, 2.5 rem, 2.5 rem, which is 4 rem on the top, 2.5 on the right and the left, and 2.5 on the bottom. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this upcoming classes box. So we're going to paste it again down here, and then we'll target the H4, and that one's going to be margin bottom of 2 rem. And then we'll paste that class again, and then we'll target the table element, and we'll say a width of 100%. And then we'll paste that again, and we'll say table TRTD, so each of the columns. So we're going to target each of these columns inside of our table. Padding 13 pixels, 10 pixels, 13 pixels, and 0. Then color of 7B, 7B, 7B. And then font size of 0.85 rem. And then we'll paste it again, upcoming classes box, and we'll say table TRTD, and then the last child TD element only, which is we're going to target the third column here of each row with TD colon last child, and we'll say text align right and padding right 0, and that's going to have an effect of kind of pushing this last column here to the very right of this parent container so that they all kind of line up to the right there. Nice and neat looking. Okay, so next we'll do the membership cards box, and I'm going to copy this because we're going to use that several times, and that's this middle box here. So let's see what we got to put in there. So first thing will be background, and that's going to be that nice blue that we have, which was 233 EDE, and then padding 1.5 rem. And let's go ahead and paste it again, and then we'll do that inner container, and this inner container had that background image, so background URL, and we'll just say top center no repeat, and I'm going to go ahead and copy a URL to an image that I have hosted already, paste it in between those single quotes, and then we'll say height 395 pixels, padding 2.5 rem, 1.5 rem, and 1.5 rem, basically saying 2.5 on the top, 1.5 on the right, left, and bottom. And let's go ahead and copy this membership cards box class one more time because we're going to use it. We're going to continue to use it for some more styles. So paste that, and then we'll target the H2 tags inside. So H2, and we'll say font size 4.5 rem, and that's going to be this 25% text. And font weight 700. Let's use that custom bolder font we grabbed, and then the color is going to be again that nice blue 233 EDE. Line height, let's bring it down to 1. Okay, and then paste it again, and let's grab the span tag inside of the H2 because we need to bring that font size way down. So font size 1 rem, and that's going to be this word discount there. So much smaller font size, and let's also decrease the letter spacing down to 0. And that should do it for the membership cards box. Next we have this personal trainer box. So personal trainer box, and I'll copy this because we're going to use it a few more times. Okay, so inside of here we have again a background image. So actually I'm going to have to copy that again after this. Top center, no repeat, and I'm going to copy the image URL that I have hosted, and again I pulled all these images from this free template on colorlib.com, so full credit goes to them for the nice design. Okay, and then padding is 4 rem, 3 rem, 3 rem, and let's copy personal trainer box one more time, paste that down there. H4 tag will say margin bottom of 2 rem, color white, and then paste it again, and then we'll target the paragraph tags. Color white and margin bottom of 1.5 rem. And what we're kind of working on here, like this H4 was this personal trainer text, and this P tag here is this entire paragraph here. So we're kind of changing the color to white and putting some margin spacing below it so that there's spacing between it and this sign up now button. So finally, let's work on that button down there. So paste our personal trainer box one more time and then button, and we'll just say width 100% for that button because we want it to span the full width of its container, which will look quite nice. And then down here, let's do schedule services and then personal trainer box strong, and this one's going to be white. So we're actually going to just be a little bit more precise when we grab our strong text to make it white here. Although it looks like we might have a bug because this does not look white. Let's see how it comes out. This might not be taking effect, but let's leave it in for now. Personal trainer box strong color. Okay, so and that should do it for the schedule services styles section. We'll leave that for now. Let's come down to our footer. So let's say, whoops, start footer section styles and then end footer section styles. So inside of here, we're going to do footer, so background URL, and again I'll just go ahead and copy the image I have hosted, which is this kind of woman, you know, stretching here. So we'll put that in as our background image, and we'll say top center no repeat, background size cover, so it fills up the entire space, and padding bottom of 2 rem. Oops, and that'll kind of give us a little bit of spacing underneath this small text at the bottom. Okay, and then footer container, so the thing that we have with the class of footer container, we'll say max width of 625 pixels and margin 0 auto, and that's to kind of just constrain our footer container here to a little bit of a smaller width than we had for the rest of our sections. And then below that, we can do our footer logo, and we just need to do display inline block on this. Everything else was the exact same as the other logos. Okay, and then next we'll grab the footer nav tag inside of there and say margin 2 rem, 0 and 6 rem on the bottom. And then footer on the unordered list, we'll say display flex and justify content space around this time. And that's going to be the flex for both this unordered list and our social icons down here. Next we'll say footer ULLIA, grabbing the hyperlinks inside of each of those unordered lists. Color white, text transform uppercase, font size 0.8 rem, and then font weight 300 to be very light text weight. And then footer, the mailing list, I'm going to say position relative. And then underneath that, we can start working on the actual text box here. So footer input, it's going to be, oops, color of white, height of 78 pixels, pretty tall text box, width 100%, box sizing, oops, box sizing, border box, background transparent, border 2 pixels, solid, not slid, solid, white, font size 13 pixels, font style is italic, and then padding left of 2 rems, and that'll give us this nice padding to the left of our text here as we type. Okay, and then next we have the button, right? So the button needs to be to the right of the text box, so we'll say position absolute, and since the parent container is positioned relative, we can kind of position this button relative to its parent wherever we want it to go. So we'll just stick it all the way over to the right. So we'll say right 2 pixels, top 2 pixels, and then padding 1.75 rem on the top and the bottom, and 3 rem on the right and the left. And that should do it for that. Next we have our social icons unordered list, and we'll say max width of 400 pixels for those, and margin 4 rem, auto 3 rem. And then we have footer UL social icons LIA, so each of the hyperlinks inside of those, and we'll say font size of 1 rem to bring it down a bit. Our social icons are a little bit small and the width is a little bit less than everything else in this entire footer section. Next we have the image of the bicep flexing down here, this blue thing is a little bit hard to see. So let's target that, and we'll say display block and margin 0 on the top, auto on the right and the left to horizontally center it, and then 2rem on the bottom. And then we have the small text at the bottom, so footer small, color white, oops, color white, opacity 0.8, font weight 300, nice and light, and then margin 0, 0.5 rem, which will be a little bit of spacing on the right and the left for smaller screens. We'll see that when we go down to mobile widths. Then the footer small a, color white, text decoration, underline. And that'll do it for the footer section style. So let's go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to want to jump back over to our HTML file, and let's start working on the JavaScript so we can kind of get some of these sliders initialized. So our page starts to come together. You can see that these are just really large. It's not working yet, so let's go ahead and get that fixed with our JavaScript. So come back over to index.html. Let's go to the very bottom of our file. And then after this closing div tag of the video frame, let's open up a script tag for JavaScript. And then inside of there, we're going to do, we'll do a document ready function. And this just means wait until the document has finished loading all of the CSS and the HTML and all the images. Once they're done loading, we're going to execute all of the code inside of this function here. So this is just a document ready function. Go ahead and close that with a semicolon, and then inside of here we're going to create some jQuery references and store them into variables. So store jQuery references to elements in some const variables so that we don't have to keep grabbing them each time. So this is a little bit of a micro optimization. We just kind of grab the elements one time with jQuery and store them in variables, and then we can refer to the variables instead of grabbing them with jQuery over and over and over again. So this will be the Hamburger Menu. We need that. Then we need the search, which is going to be just a hashtag of search. Then we have search container hide, which is going to be hashtag search container hide. And then we have search container, which is just search hyphen container. Then we have our YouTube buttons, and those actually have a class because there's 3 of them. So we'll say dot YouTube hyphen button. Then we need our video frame container. So video frame equals video frame, and then video frame hide equals video frame hide. And then finally the actual iframe video itself, we'll call it embed video, and then we gave that an ID of embed hyphen video. So grab all those variables, and we're going to use all those in just a moment here. So first thing that we're going to do next is initialize the hero slider. So this kind of looks like, so grab it with jQuery, and the ID was hero slider, and we'll say dot slick, and that is going to make use of that slick slider plugin that we pulled into our file up top. And this takes quite a bit of settings in the form of a JavaScript object. So we just have these curly braces. So this is just one large object. So we're going to say infinite is true. We want it to keep scrolling over and over again. Slides to show is just one at a time, because this is our upper hero section slider. Slides to scroll, also 1. We don't want any of the arrows, so arrows false, but we do want the dots, so dots true. We want it to be autoplay, so that will be true. And we'll set the autoplay speed, which is how quickly it automatically rotates, to 4,000 milliseconds, or 4 seconds. And then this is pause on focus false and pause on hover false. This will kind of make sure that if the user has their mouse hovered or clicked on this hero section, it will still continue to scroll through each of these hero images. If these were set to true, then it would pause on the current image when the user's mouse is on top of it. And that's not what we want for this. We want it to keep kind of scrolling through regardless. So those need to be false, and we'll say fade true, so it kind of fades in and out to each hero slide image, and then speed 1,000 for each transition. And then we'll say CSS ease, we'll just say linear, and that just kind of means that it's a linear or constant rate of change or constant transition from each image. And then close it with a semicolon there, and that should initialize. So if we save the file, come back to our working prototype and refresh, we should see, oh, I must have a typo somewhere. First things first, always check for errors in the console. There are no errors in the console. Okay, so it looks like I may have had a typo somewhere. So I'm gonna go back up to where we created our hero slider. And let's see, I have hero slider item for the class. So hero slider item, is that what I called it in the CSS? So hero slide item. Oh man, look at that one letter, and that screws everything up. So let's update each of these inner divs to hero slide item, hero slide item, hero slide item. Save that, let's do a refresh. Look at that, there we go. One small typo and screws everything up. So it's working, it's kind of sliding through, but we still need to do some media queries in our CSS to kind of bring this text size down a little bit smaller on smaller screens so that we don't get this kind of button overlap with our dots and whatnot. But the page is starting to come together. If we scroll through, we kind of have everything. We still have to initialize this slider here, but oops, everything else is kind of coming together. We still need to work on our search and YouTube video pop-ups. They're kind of just appearing down here by default. So anyways, let's go ahead and continue on. So come back down here to our JavaScript, and underneath this first slider initialization code, we're going to go ahead and work on the personal trainers slider next. And this one's going to be super complicated because it needs to be responsive. So trainers-slider, we'll do the same thing, .slick, and we're going to open up a JavaScript object. So curly braces. Infinite is true. Slides to show by default will be 3. Slides to scroll by default will be 1. And whoops, not a semicolon. Make sure that's a comma. Okay, and then next we'll do prev arrow, because we're going to want to do some custom HTML for each of our arrows. We'll do a href, so a hyperlink, and then we'll do class equals slick-arrow and then slick-prev. And then say previous, and then close the hyperlink at the end. And then let's go ahead and put a comma and then copy all of this. And then we'll do the same thing on the next line, but we'll call it next arrow. So update it there, and then instead of previous, we'll say next, and then instead of slick prev, it'll be slick next. Okay, and then now we have to define our responsive breakpoint. So this is going to be an array. So responsive, and then open up a square bracket for the array, and then each responsive breakpoint will be an object. So curly braces, and the first one is going to be 1100 pixels. So 1100, and then the settings are going to be slides to show. Whoops, slides to show will be 3. Slides to scroll 1, and then infinite is true. And then now that I'm looking at this again, it looks like these settings are the exact same what we have by default up here, infinite true and 3 and 1. So we actually might not even need this 1100 breakpoint. I'll comment it out for now in case I'm forgetting something, but we might not even need this. Let's get rid of that for now. Let's come down below it and we'll say another object, and we'll say breakpoint 767. It's a common breakpoint. And then for this one, we're going to say slides to show 2, slides to scroll is still going to be 1, infinite, true, and let's get rid of the arrows false. And so, and once again, I'm actually looking at this, and I don't know that we need to repeat anything that's the same as it was before. So let's actually get rid of slides to scroll of 1 because we already have that by default. Let's get rid of the infinite true because we already have that by default. So we'll just leave slides to show 2 and arrows false, because those are the things that we're going to have changed from up here. So other than that, let's work on the next breakpoint. So underneath this parent object, open up another object, and we'll say breakpoint 530. Settings for this one are going to be slides to show 1, and arrows false as well. That actually might do it. We might have to come back and revisit this and make sure that all of those settings are taking effect at each breakpoint. But let's finish the rest of our JavaScript before we kind of give that a test. So let's put a semicolon at the end of that slick slider initialization and then come down again. Make sure that we're still inside of our closing document ready function. So this kind of closes this upper function here. So we got to make sure that we're writing all of our code inside of that closing curly brace and parentheses there. So next I'll say initialize event handling, and then we'll do the hamburger menu. Hamburger menu dot on. Let's add a click event, and we'll have a callback function here. And inside of the callback of the click event, we'll say header nav dot toggle, and that's just going to kind of turn on and off our header nav when they click the hamburger menu on smaller screens. And then we'll go ahead and do a click event on our search icon, and that's also going to have a callback. And inside of that callback, we're going to say search container, and we're going to add some CSS properties. So open up an object. So let's get rid of that pop-up. Search container.css parentheses and then curly brace for an object. And then we're going to set some CSS rules inside of our JavaScript. So we'll say opacity 1 and make sure that these are all in strings. So single quotes, comma, visibility, visible, comma, z index 100. And close the semicolon there. Semicolon there, and then we're going to have a few other click events that are very similar to this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole click event for our search, paste it down here one time, again and again. So we have 4 times. So the next one is going to be search container hide. So when they click that close X button, we're going to want to do basically the opposite of this. So we're going to want to set the opacity back to 0, so it's basically invisible. Set the visibility to hidden so we cannot see it for sure, and then set the z-index to 0 so it kind of rests behind the rest of the home page. It doesn't block anything. So I should do that, and then next we'll have the YouTube buttons. So YouTube button dot on click, and for this one we're going to say video frame. So video frame.css, and it's going to be very similar. It'll be opacity 1, visibility visible, and z-index 100. And then we have video frame hide dot on click, and again we're going to do video frame dot css, and this is going to be opacity 0, basically the opposite of what we did up top. Visibility hidden, because this is going to hide that video embed. Z index of 0. Okay, so moving on, underneath this video frame dot css, we'll do embed video dot prop and then a source attribute, and we'll say embed video dot prop source. And what this is basically doing is once we close that video frame, so let's say our users kind of clicked this, they pushed play on this, and then they closed this X button here. When they close that, we don't want that video to keep playing. We want to make sure that it stops playing when they close that video frame. And so what this is doing is basically just resetting the source attribute of the iframe, which was the link to the YouTube video, resetting this source. So it's like removing this and then re-adding it into the source attribute. And what that does in effect is it basically like reloads the iframe, which causes the video to stop playing. I couldn't find an easy way to just stop an embedded YouTube video, so that was kind of a little hack to get around it. So that's what this line 404 is doing here. So nothing too special there. And that should do it for our JavaScript. So, okay, so let's come back over to our CSS file. And first things first, let's work on, first I'm going to grab this. Let's pull this back out a bit. First things first, let's work on the styling of this search so it kind of rests on top of the page. It's got this nice background and the close button. And let's also work on this pop-up YouTube embed video CSS as well. So that's basically all going to live underneath our footer CSS. So let's come down to the bottom of the CSS file here, and underneath here I'll just say start, search, and embed video overlay styles. Let's copy that, paste it down here, and we'll just say end. I like to keep my CSS nice and organized with comments so I can quickly refer back to where certain style rules are for each part of the page. So, okay, first things first, our search container and our video frame both have similar CSS because they're both going to rest on top of the page. They're both going to be kind of floating at 100% width and height. They're going to be fixed positioning, all that. But let's go ahead and set a background of 073B4C, which is going to be this nice kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, like a turquoise blue. So set that background in there, and then we'll say position fixed, top 0, left 0, width 100%, height 100%, z-index by default will be 0, so it's kind of behind the whole page. Visibility by default is going to be hidden, so it's invisible, and transition we'll set to 0.3 seconds to kind of create this nice like fade in, fade out effect. Okay, and then next we'll just target the video frame by itself because we want to override that background color because the video background was that like see-through black, right? It's kind of translucent black background. So we'll set that here. It'll be RGBA 0.8 for the opacity. All right, and then below that we have video frame container, which was a class name. We'll say position relative, margin 0 auto, width 100%, max width 900 pixels, and top 20% on larger screens, and we'll see how that changes on smaller screens shortly. Then inside of that we had that video frame scalar, and so this is going to be a little bit weird. We'll say 100% for the width, but we'll give it a height of 0, overflow of hidden, and then padding top of 56%. And what this kind of does is it kind of ensures that this video frame scalar, which is kind of what's containing the entire iframe video, it will kind of scale the height and the width with the parent container. So you can see how the height and the width is kind of coming down evenly, right? So it kind of maintains the aspect ratio of that div container, which kind of resizes the iframe nicely. So little CSS trick there for that. And then so under that, let's do video frame scalar, and then the iframe inside, whoops, which is the actual video itself. We'll say width 100%, height 100%, position absolute, top 0, left 0, display block, and then box shadow of 0.08 pixels, and then RGBA we'll do 0.6 for the opacity. Give it a nice light box shadow around the video itself. And then we'll say search container hide and video frame hide are both going to be the same. So they're going to be white. Font size is 1.75 rem. Position is absolute, and we want it to be at the top right of the page. So we'll say top 30 pixels, right 30 pixels, which is going to be 30 pixels away from the top of the page, right? And 30 pixels away from the right of the page. So it kind of puts that close button right up there. And that's also on the search. So it puts that up there nicely. And then also finally cursor pointer. So we get that nice hover cursor so that our users know that it's a clickable button. Okay, and the next thing we got to work on some of the stuff inside of the search container, right? Like this header, and then style this input box and this button quite nicely. Because right now, if we go back to our work in progress, and is this wired up yet? Yeah, so you can see that it works, but we don't really have things kind of lined up properly. So let's work on that next. Let's go ahead and refresh that, come back over to our prototype. And so next we'll do search container H3, and then search container input, and we're going to say position absolute, top 50%, left 0, right 0, and then margin -50 pixels on the top to bring it up a little bit to vertically center it, auto on the right and left, and 0 on the bottom. So that will horizontally center it, and then the top 50% will kind of bring it down 50%, but it'll bring it down a little bit too far, so then we kind of bring it back up a bit to offset it by half of its total height. So bring it up by 50 pixels, and then we'll say max width of 500 pixels. Underneath that, we'll do search container, and then the H3, which is actually that word, I think it was search. Yeah, this word search here. So we'll just target that by itself now, and we'll say font size 2.5 rem, letter spacing, bring that down to 1 pixels, text align center, and then margin -125 pixels, auto 0, and then search container input, the input text box itself. So search container input space input, width 100%, height 58 pixels, box sizing, box sizing, border box, font size 16 pixels, padding left 2 rem. So it's going to be very similar to the input box down in the very bottom of the page for the mailing list, just we're not going to have an italic font. Okay, and then finally search container input, and then the button, it's going to be similar to the mailing list, position absolute, right 0, top 0, padding left 1.5 rem, padding right 1.5 rem. Bring the padding down a bit there. Okay, so let's go ahead and come over here. Let's do a refresh. Let's see how we're looking. Looking better. We still don't have our search icon. So what happened to our search icon? How about our YouTube video here? So we got the search icon for the YouTube video appearing. So I must have missed that in the HTML. So if we come back up to the top of, or not the top, down here where we had the video embed in the search container. So we have yeah, here it is, search container close. So I wonder, did I miss, I must have had a typo somewhere. Okay, so search container close, and in the style sheet I think I did, let's see, search container hide. Once again, I had one small misspelling there. So change close to hide. So it should be span ID of search container hide. So save that. Let's do a quick refresh, make sure it works. There it goes. There it is. So the close there, and then the YouTube play button, that works. Perfect. So let's go back to our prototype here. So we still have a few more things to do. As you can see, the styling is a little bit different. So come back to our style sheet. So let's go ahead and down here, let's open another comment. Let's just say start media queries, and then end media queries, and then we'll say at media max width 992 pixels, and this is basically on screens with a width of 992 pixels or smaller, apply these style rules. So we'll do H2, we're going to bring that down to 6 rems. I think it was on larger screens, I think we had it at 8 rems. So we'll bring that down to 6, and then next we'll do header and then the nav tag, and we'll say max width of 775 pixels, bring that down a bit, and then top gym logo, we'll say margin 0 and 1 rem, and then upcoming classes box, we're going to say padding 2 rem, 1.5 rem, and 0.5 rem. So bring that padding down a bit on that upcoming classes box, and then let's go ahead and do that again. So upcoming classes box, and then the H4 inside we'll say margin bottom 1 rem. Then membership cards box dot inner container, bring the padding down a bit on that, so 0.5 rem, 1.5 rem, and 1.5 rem. Height 100%, and then box sizing border box. Whoops. Okay, and then underneath that, membership cards box H2, font size 3.5 rem, personal trainer box, padding is 2 rem, 1.5 rem, 1.5 rem. Personal trainer box P is going to be, so the paragraph text, we'll bring the font size down a bit to 0.85 rems to leave some more room on smaller screens. And that should do it for the 9992 breakpoint. So now let's do a min width breakpoint. So we'll do @media min width, and we'll say 768 pixels. And this is for screens that are 768 pixels or larger. We'll do the header nav, and we're going to say display block important. So we want to make sure that it is always visible on screens larger than 768. And we'll see kind of why we do that shortly. Next, let's do an @media with max width 767 pixels. So this is going to be everything smaller than our min width breakpoint. And we'll say H2. And we're going to bring that font size down even more, so down to 4 rem on smaller screens, and then margin top of 2 rem. And then for our flex boxes, we're going to just get rid of all of those, and they're all going to just act as regular display block divs. So we're no longer going to use our flex CSS on smaller screens, on screens smaller than 767 pixels. And that's kind of how we're going to get these things to collapse on top of one another rather than horizontally kind of laid out one row like this. So by doing display block, we'll remove our flex behavior, and then we'll do the dot boxes inside of the flex. We'll say margin 0 auto to horizontally center them, and then we'll say width 100%, and we'll just give it an important to make sure that that takes effect for all of our boxes. So these, instead of being about 33% width or so, we're going to do 100%. They span the entire width of the page, and they go one on top of the other. And let's also give them a margin top of 3 rems. And then we'll do .flex.box first child, and we'll get rid of that margin top on the first child. And that way there's no extra spacing on top of the first box, which will increase this amount of white space, which is not what we want. So margin top 0 on the first child of those boxes. And then let's go and target our header. And we're going to say background RGBA 0000.85. We're going to darken that up a bit. And let's grab the container inside of the header, and we'll say display flex. So we want to keep that as display flex. Justify content space between, align items center, and this is going to be for the Hamburger menu and the logo to the left. So we'll see that shortly. In fact, I'll kind of show you what we're doing here on the prototype. So if I bring this down to a smaller screen, you can see that we have our Hamburger menu on the right and our logo on the left. And that's why we want to keep our header container as a flex container, because we have something on the left and something on the right, kind of horizontally laid out. I mean, we could use float right and float left, right? But that's kind of the old school way of doing it. Easier to use flex. So that's going to be our kind of our one and only flex box on smaller screens, is that there. So I'll just keep that on small screens since we're working on our media queries anyway. Okay, so moving on here, we want to do header logo mobile, and so that's this header logo here. This is the one that we want to show up on smaller screens. So we'll say display inline block. Okay, so next we're going to work on the nav tag inside of the header, and we'll say position absolute top 100%, width 100%. Background will be RGBA 000 and 0.85, and display none by default there. And then we'll say header nav ul.flex, and then this one we don't want to be a flex container anymore either, so we're going to set that to display block so that it is not set to display flex anymore, because again, when we click this, right, we want these to be one on top of the other and not kind of horizontally aligned. And I know that we can also kind of do this with a flex container as well. It's just, I find it a lot easier to just remove the flex behavior, go back to block, and then you can kind of just stack these pretty easily and put some spacing in the form of padding or margin. So you can do it kind of either way, but this is just easier for me. So okay, so display block there, and then underneath that we'll do the list items, and those are just going to be margin 1 rem 0 to give it some spacing on top and bottom of each one, and then header nav ulli, and then the last child we want to do extra margin on the bottom, so margin bottom 2 rem, and then header nav ullia, so each of the hyperlinks will increase the font size to 1.5 rems so that they're easily clickable on small touch devices. And then Next things, we'll target that search icon. So hashtag search, and we'll say position static. We don't want it to be position absolute anymore. And then font size 1.5 rems as well, increase that. Then we'll do the hamburger menu. So hamburger-menu, and that one's going to be display block. So we're going to make that visible on screens 767 pixels or smaller. Then we have the header logo, and that'll be display none. And then features.box.feature info container, and we're going to set the padding 0, top and bottom, and 1 rem on the right and the left. Then we have the schedule services container and the flex container inside of that. We'll set to width of 90%. We're going to make sure it's a flex container still, and then we're going to do that flex wrap. And the reason we're kind of keeping this as a flex container on 767 breakpoint is, let's see, if I scroll down to that section, let's make this page a little bit larger. Let's go to about 767. So we have our 3 boxes here, and when we go down to just below 767, it collapses down to, where is it at? Collapses down to the 2 boxes still horizontally, and then the personal trainer box 100% width underneath it. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to have this flex container to behave as a flex box. We're going to set each of these to about 50% width or so, or about like 48%, and then this one will be 100% width, and then we'll set the flex wrap to wrap if it runs out of horizontal space, and that'll kind of automatically wrap this element below these two and kind of have this nice layout there. So that's what's happening there. So display flex, flex wrap, wrap, and then underneath that we'll say schedule services dot flex, and then greater than sign to grab just the child div upcoming classes box, comma, and let's go ahead and just copy all this because we're going to grab the other box. And that one we call div.membership cards box. And those are both going to be, as I said, about 48% width to give it this kind of almost half of the width of the screen. And then underneath that, let's copy this one more time. Let's just do the whole thing. And this one's going to be schedule services flex div.personal trainer box. So personal trainer box, and this one will be width of 100%. And then also margin top 3 rem, and then we want to also do background size to cover to make sure that this background image kind of spans 100% of the width. It's going to zoom in naturally because, you know, that's just the aspect ratio of the image, but it's better than having white space on the right and the left. So background size of cover. Then let's do personal trainer box and the paragraph tag inside, and bring the font size back up to 0.95 rems. And then we'll do membership cards box inner container, and that's going to also be background size of cover. And that should do it for the 767 pixel breakpoint. So underneath that, we'll open up another one, almost done here. We'll do media max width 600 pixels, and this is going to be video frame container, and we'll say top 30%. I'm going to bring that down a little bit more vertically on 600 pixels or smaller screens, and that'll make it look nice. Next we'll have schedule services container, and then all 3 of the divs inside of that, which is going to be all 3 of these boxes. And on this size of a screen we want to go with 100%, and let's do it important so that it kind of overrides these widths up here. So with 100% important, and then we'll do margin top 3 rem for all of them, and then let's just copy this, paste it below, and then we'll say dot flex greater than sign div, and then just the first child element, which is just this upcoming classes box, we're going to say let's see, get rid of that, and we'll say margin top 0 so that we don't have extra spacing above that first collapsed box. And then let's see, what else do we have here? We have the membership cards box inner container. Let's do min height 500 pixels so it doesn't shrink too small vertically. And that should do it for that section. Now let's go to the footer, and let's grab each of the hyperlinks inside of our unordered lists, and we'll bring the font sizes down to 0.65 rems on smaller screens, and then also the mailing list. Whoops. we're going to go margin 0 and 0.5 rems. So 0 on the top and the bottom and 0.5 on the right and the left, just to get a little bit spacing between the right and the left edges of the screen. Then footer button, padding right 1 rem, padding left 1 rem, and that's for this sign up button. So on very small screens, we don't want it to get, we want it to still kind of fit nicely, so we reduce the padding on the right and the left so it kind of fits nicer on the screen. That should do it for that breakpoint. Next we have I think one last breakpoint here, and that's going to be when our screen widths are smaller than 500 pixels. This will only really apply to like mobile phone screens, right? So membership cards box, inner container, we're going to set the min height to 400 pixels. And then the footer unordered lists, we want to do flex wrap, and then footer nav ULLI, we want to do width 33%, margin top of 1 rem, and that's going to make it so that these footer links here will collapse down to 2 lines on below 500 pixels, so it kind of has that nice word wrap there, 3 per row, so we have a little bit more room there on super small screens. So that is for that functionality there. And so let's go ahead and save the file, and I think that's pretty much going to do it, but let's do some testing. So I'm going to go over to our working prototype here. Let's do a refresh, and let's just make sure that we're good to go here. So let's quickly scroll through on larger screens. So our hero slider is working, it's 100% the width. If you click on the dots, you can quickly scroll through different slides. The play button works. You got the YouTube video. If I push play on this, I close it.
Have a vision.
Okay, so it didn't stop the video when I closed the X there. So that is not working. So what happened there? Let's go back into our HTML down to the bottom. So embed video.prop source, and set that to the embed videos.prop source. That looks correct. Did we grab the reference to the embed video properly? Embed video equals embed video with a hashtag. Oh, so when I copied and pasted from YouTube, I forgot to add the ID of embed video. So right after the iframe tag, let's do ID equals embed hyphen video. Save that, come back to our prototype here, refresh, and then let's go ahead and do that again. So click that, push play on the embedded YouTube video. It's playing, close it, and it stops. So now it's working, great. Click search, search looks like it's working, close that. Everything else looks pretty well aligned on larger screens. We get 3 personal trainers, and they slide one at a time. We get the left and right arrows. That's supposed to be that way. Footer looks good. Okay, so let's collapse this down a bit to say maybe iPhone size or so. Okay, let's start from the top really quick. So we got our Top Gym logo on the left, Hamburger Menu. When you click it, you get your links, and you got our search icon there. We click our search icon, we get this still overlaid on top of the screen. Close that, close the Hamburger Menu, press that, we get our embedded YouTube video still vertically centered. Our hero slider is still working. Come down, all of these boxes are collapsing down nicely. Services section collapsing down nicely, and our trainers now is just one at a time, and we can click to drag and slide, and it slides them one at a time. Come back down here, these boxes collapse down nicely, and then also if we go a little bit larger, we had these collapse down 2. Yep, so then there's 2, and personal trainer 100% width below those, so that's working as expected. And they go down to one on top of the other on smaller screens, and then our footer section looks perfect on small screens as well. The links collapse down, we got our Top Gym logo, the background image looks good, our social links are nice and spaced evenly, and we have our copyright text down there. So that's pretty much going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, and if you want to hear about kind of how I did any of the things in here, just leave a comment. I'm kind of happy to explain anything that doesn't make sense further in the comments. So pretty responsive there. So yeah, and I'll see you guys next time.